Welcome into another episode of Three's a Crowd. I'm Preston Vargas. Eli is on vacation for spring break this week, so it's just me in the house today. And this will be a different kind of episode than usual. As you know, March Madness is upon us. Technically, the first four starts tomorrow, but the real March Madness, the Field of 64, begins Thursday at noon, and we'll be streaming all that on our channel here, beginning Thursday at noon. As we'll do some first four games as well, but. Before we get to this episode, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. We are just three subscribers away as of recording this from 100. So make sure to help us get there by the time the Field of 64 kicks off on Thursday. All right, let's get into an unusual topic. We're going to do our top headlines right now, and then we're going to spend the rest of the show going into our March Madness bracket prediction. So we'll start in the NFL with the Chiefs are trading for Justin Fields. The Chiefs sent a six-round pick back to the Jets for him. He's going to be backing up Patrick Mahomes. And with that torn ACL that Mahomes suffered at the end of the year last year, we'll see if he's available to go week one. But if not, the Chiefs have a week one starter in their hands with Justin Fields. I think that's a good move. And then some breaking news concerning March Madness. The Alabama's number two scorer, Aiden Holloway, was arrested over a felony drug charge. So definitely a dicey situation there. We'll see if he's playing in the first game against Hofstra this week. And then a retirement in college basketball, Butler Thad Matta retires after coaching with 502 wins. Legendary coach for Butler. They really haven't been in the conversation as of late, but it's good that he's retiring. And then NBA's keying a vote for an expansion next week, so we'll see what happens there. Seattle and Las Vegas are the front runners according to Shams Charania. So we'll probably get that vote. I'm hearing they would play in the starting the 2028-29 season. So in about 3 years, we can see expansion of the NBA. And then obviously the game that people were talking about last night, the Dominican Republic losing to the U.S. 2-1 after that blown strike call. They they called a strike, and a lot of people thought it was a ball. From what I saw, it was a ball called, or excuse me, it was a strike called, and the ball was just below the box on TV. So a little bit of a controversial call. I don't think they have ABS in the World Baseball Classic, but it'd be interesting to see that happen in the MLB this season. So those are our top headlines. Now let's get into some bracket predictions. So I'll pull it up here. Right now we have the field of 68, as we call it right now. Of course, the first four begins on Wednesday, or excuse me, on uh, Tuesday night, tomorrow night, with the uh, forgot who's playing. I think it was UMBC and Howard, I believe. Let me double check that. Tuesday night, it is going to be UMBC and Howard, yes. And then Texas and NC State playing in the first four in the late game. And then the other first four, Prairie View, A&M, and Lehigh going up against Miami of Ohio, one of the last teams in, and SMU. I thought they did right by getting Miami of Ohio in the tournament. They definitely deserve to be in. And some of the first four left out, Oklahoma, Auburn, uh, just on the cusp of getting in. I mean, you could have argued that Auburn should have been in, but the SEC is just too deep. That's the thing. They got 14 in last year. Obviously, they're going to have some letdowns this year, but we'll see. The number one seeds are Duke. They're the number one overall seed out of the Eastern bracket. They'll play um, Arizona number one in the West, and then Michigan number two overall seed. Florida's the number four one seed. So we had a reaction uh, to the drawing of the teams live, so we don't have to look at who's playing each other in the field of 64. And we did a bracket prediction last night with Jackson Burleson on the take. I'll link his show in this in the description below. But if you haven't seen that, it's premiering now as we are recording this. But I made some tweaks from last night, but we'll see what happens. So here is the official bracket prediction. And of course, this is subject to change, whether injuries happen. But let's get into it. The first game, Duke and Siena out of the East bracket. Obviously, Duke's going to win that. No question about that. And then the other game in that bracket, TCU and Ohio State. This one's a toss up right now. Ohio State favored by 4.5. The spread is closing in. So it opened at 4.5. Uh, it's closing a little bit to 2.5. I think that this is going to be a tough matchup, but I think Ohio State's going to win this one. And that's going to be the first game that kicks off the field of 64. St. John's and Iowa State, of course, got to go with Rick Pitino here in the first round over UNI. Making the tournament for the first time since 2016. That's a good pick there. Friday night from San Diego, Cal Baptist and Kansas. Obviously, Kansas, Bill Self. Cal Baptist making their first ever appearance in the NCAA tournament. But they're not going to win, unfortunately. Give me Kansas in this one. Louisville taking on South Florida. Some people might take it as an upset pick, but I don't like the South Florida Bulls. As a UCF fan, we can't stand them. I'm taking Louisville in this one. And then the 3-14 matchup, Michigan State and North Dakota State. Obviously, can't pick against Tom Izzo. Taking Michigan State here. And UCLA, UCF. It'd be sacrilegious of me to pick against UCF, so I'm taking them over UCLA. I have to. And then UConn and Furman, Dan Hurley first round. It's March time for Hurley. Give me the UConn Huskies. Then the one seed Florida Gators in the South Regional. They're going to take on Prairie View Prairie View A&M or Lehigh. Don't matter. Florida's moving on. Enough said. Clemson and Iowa. This is a really even pick, but I'm going to give the slight advantage here to Clemson because it's closer travel for them. I'm taking the Tigers. I know a lot of Clemson fans in Florida, also Iowa fans in Florida too, but slightly closer to Clemson in to Tampa. And then from Oklahoma City, McNeese State taking on Vanderbilt. Um, Obviously, no reason for to pick an upset here. I'm taking Vanderbilt all the way here. Nebraska and Troy. Now, this is one that where I thought could be an upset pick until I looked at some of the data. Now, Nebraska's been a streaky team. Of course, they were undefeated, and they've had some notable results lately where they beat teams like Wisconsin, Illinois, Michigan State. The, that Illinois game was on the road. Then you lose to in a blowout to Purdue. You lost twice to Purdue, once in the tournament. So we'll see what happens. And of course, Nebraska has never won a tournament game ever. I didn't know that. And taking a look at Troy, probably their best non-conference win was Kent State. But the thing is, they had Thomas Stout, a 6'8" forward, averages a double double. But I think I'm going to go back on my upset pick that I predicted last night. I think Nebraska, they're under pressure to win, and I think they're going to at least win in the first round. Give me Nebraska here in this spot. North Carolina, VCU. This is one where Jackson last night he picked VCU, and now looking at it, VCU has a player named Djokovic. If you're a tennis fan, you know that name pretty well. And looking at some results oh, so looking at VCU's results in big games, it was not good. Their top six opponents: Utah State, NC State, Vanderbilt, St. Louis, George Mason, St. Louis, and Dayton. Or actually, they swept Dayton. They beat them in the A10 final. So you got that, but the resume just doesn't speak for itself. And we heard the committee say that VCU was basically in the tournament because they won their conference. But this is one where I have to pick UNC here, even though you don't have Caleb Foster. And yeah, that's going to be a massive loss there for the UNC Tar Heels. I think they're just a better team in that sense. But we'll see. That's the thing. How are we going to evaluate them without Caleb Foster? That's going to be the key. Illinois and Penn, that's going to be an easy pick for me. Illinois over Penn. Keaton Wagler, one of their best scorers. He had a 40-point game that we did back in January when they played in Purdue. Basically led them to that win. I'm taking Illinois. St. Mary's and Texas A&M. Now this is one that's a pretty controversial pick here because on the one hand you have an SEC team in Texas A&M who, let's face it, did not have the best record in the conference, which is why they're a 10 seed. But the SEC is pretty loaded. They've been cannibalizing, to a word to put it lightly, they've been cannibalizing everybody all year long. So they burst on the bubble, but I don't know. St. Mary's, they had some good wins. They beat Wichita State, but you lost to. If you look at common opponents, they played Vanderbilt. Both teams lost to Vanderbilt, and they're a 5 seed. So we'll see. They beat Gonzaga once in the regular season finale. I mean, in my opinion, St. Mary's is too high of a seed. I'm going to take Texas A&M here over St. Mary's. And then moving on to Houston and Idaho. Of course, it's going to be Houston. Congratulations to Idaho making the tournament for the first time since 1990, from what I saw. But it's the Cougars' time. They're going to win this one. Then going on to the West bracket, Arizona taking on Long Island. Excuse me. Of course, it's going to be Arizona. No way I can pick Long Island here. Villanova and Utah State. This is another toss-up. Right now, it looks like the slide edge goes to Villanova, and they've had success. Don't get me wrong. See, notable games against BYU, Michigan, they lost those games. You beat Wisconsin and Butler, but you lost to the top two in your conference in St. John's and UConn, swept by them in the regular season. So we can't. We'll see what happens there. In terms of Utah State, their bubble resume, in terms of their notable opponents, they went because what ESPN's Tournament Challenge does, they give you one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, the top opponents that they played this season. So Utah State went 8-1 against those teams, and then Villanova they went just 2-7 in that category. So I'm going to take Utah State here based on what they've accomplished in the regular season because even though it's March, I don't diminish the regular season. You are what your record says you are and who you played. So I'll take Utah State. I think they're more battle tested, in my opinion. So then the 5-12 game, Wisconsin and High Point. I heard some analysts taking High Point. I mean, they are 13-4, pretty good season in the Big South, making the tournament for the second consecutive year after making their debut last year. So Wisconsin, they're definitely battle tested in the Big Ten. Big non-conference game. They even though they got blown out against BYU on the road, you still had results against Michigan. You beat them for their first loss of the season. Then Illinois on the road. That's always a tough place to play. Blowing out Tom Izzo in Michigan State. That's another thing. For High Point, their best win was against Furman, who's in the tournament. So, and then you played Winthrop 3 times with 2-1 against them. They just High Point just doesn't have the resume to stack up with Wisconsin. I'm taking them. Arkansas and Hawaii, another easy pick here. John Calipari, the legend, going up against Hawaii. I'm going to take them. And then BYU against the winner of Texas and NC State. That one's going to be AJ Debonza moving on. In that one, I'm taking BYU. Gonzaga, Kennesaw State. in the first round. This is a bit no, actually no, this isn't a toss up. Lines moving in Gonzaga's favor. I'm taking them to win that one. Miami and Missouri from St. Louis. So this one is an interesting one. It's a pretty good upset pick for some people. Miami, their best wins were against NC State and Louisville, and Missouri beat Florida at home. That's a good win. They beat them by 2 points. Beating Kentucky on the road, that's no easy feat. And then Vanderbilt, you beat at home. I want to say that was either their first or second loss of the season when they beat them. They beat Tennessee. I'm going to give Missouri the edge here and pick them because they're in their backyard in St. Louis. It's going to be a home court advantage there for sure. I'm taking Missouri over Miami. Purdue and Queens, and not much time need to be spent here. Purdue over Queens, making their debut in their first year of eligibility in the NCAA tournament. Great season for them, but it ends at the hands of Purdue. And looking at Queens results, they win. Their best win was against Lipscomb, and that's Lipscomb. That's the ninth best team that they played. So their biggest test, they haven't fared well, to be honest, and that's the thing. So they'll go to the final quadrant of the bracket. We'll go Michigan, US over UNBC and Howard. That's going to be an easy win for the Wolverines. Georgia and St. Louis. This one's a toss-up game, if you will. So looking at Georgia's resume, they have wins against Auburn, uh, Kentucky, and Alabama. Arguably, Auburn was their best win. Going on the road to play Florida, they got blown out there. But I would say St. Louis is more battle tested. They beat the teams that they're supposed to beat. Yeah, give me the St. Louis Billikens. And then Texas Tech against Akron. This one was an upset pick that I had in in the show we did for Jackson's podcast. Although the line is shortening a little bit. But let's take a look at TCU's resume. Beating Duke, beating BYU, Houston, only losing to Houston by 4 points on the road, lose to Kansas by three. They did get blown out by Iowa State in the conference tournament. You still beat them on the road when you went to Hilton Coliseum. And for Akron, their biggest games against James Madison, that was a huge win for them. You lost to Purdue. You lost to Yale. You lost to Murray State. Only 3 points. You only lost by three to Miami of Ohio. Um, but I would have to say, even though they don't have JT Toppin, Jackson made a point last night. They've been great without him so far. So that's why I'm going to stick with Texas Tech here to win. And then Alabama Hofstra, obviously the whole situation with Aiden Holloway, him getting arrested on one of those drug charges. Um, but still going to pick Alabama here in this spot. Tennessee against the winner of Miami of Ohio or SMU. Oh, that's going to be a tough matchup. Of course, Miami of Ohio, their loss was against uh, UMass in the conference championship game or conference tournament, I should say, in the quarterfinal. So they have to play the playing game now against SMU. But I would say that SEC resume for Tennessee, they've had better quality wins. I think I'm going to pick Tennessee in this spot. Sorry, Miami of Ohio. And then Virginia taking on Wright State. This will be a Friday afternoon game. Pretty solid outing for Virginia, I think is going to happen there. Virginia's going to win that one. Kentucky and Santa Clara. This one is a toss-up game. Right now, the line's moved in favor of Kentucky. Let's take a look at the team insights right now. Of course, Kentucky, they've had notable losses to Louisville, Gonzaga. They got blown out at home to Gonzaga, 94-59. And then Vanderbilt on the road, you got blown out there. The thing with Kentucky is that their highs are really high, their lows can be very, very low. But Santa Clara, their best wins, they beat McNeese State. Going to Gonzaga, they lost to them. You lost them twice. You beat St. Mary's 2 out of 3 meetings. Or actually, they played Gonzaga 3 times. They lost to them all 3 times. But Kentucky's one of those teams, in my opinion. They're such a streaky team. But I think I'm going to stick with my upset pick here. I'm taking Santa Clara here in this spot. Iowa State taking on Tennessee State. And easy game here. Iowa State moves on. So now that brings us to the round of 32. We go to Duke and Ohio State. Pretty solid matchup here, but it's going to be Duke rolling over Ohio State. St. John's, Kansas, 2 legendary head coaches here in the second round. And you know what? I'm feeling upset here. Give me St. John's over Kansas. Rick Pitino has what it takes to have him move on. And then Louisville taking on Michigan State. And this is where I'm going to take Tom Izzo here over Louisville. And then UCF and UConn. Unfortunately, this is where the ride ends for UCF. I don't really see them beating Dan Hurley and UConn. It's just a bad luck of the draw for UCF as much as I want to see a run to the Sweet 16. Now, I don't think we're going to get blown out. That's the thing. I think we'll make it close at the end to make UConn sweat it out a little bit. But at the end of the day, I think UConn's going to be the one that moves on in the second round. And then Florida taking on Clemson. And obviously, Florida's going to move on. Home court advantage in Tampa, about 2 hours south of Gainesville. There's going to be a lot of Florida fans live in the Tampa Bay region. So I'm taking the Gators here. Vanderbilt taking on Nebraska. Now, I think this is the matchup where I would say Vanderbilt's going to move on over Nebraska. So, I mean, Vanderbilt's been one of the hotter teams in the SEC, and I was on the fence about picking Nebraska as the to move Nebraska on, but at the end of the day, I did take them. But the right ends here for Fred Hoiberg. They'll get their tournament win, and that'll be that. UNC and Illinois. Yeah, this one's a pretty good matchup between two powerhouse programs as of lately. But looking at common opponents, I think this is the ride for UNC ends here with Caleb Foster out. You're probably not going to see him. That old Southwest Conference matchup, Texas A&M and M and Houston. So second round matchup here. Don't need to spend much time on this one. Give me the Cougars. Kelvin Sampson going back to the Sweet 16. On the other side of the bracket, round of 32, Arizona and Utah State. And for me, that's going to be Arizona in this category. They're moving on over Utah State. They got a pretty good draw there. Wisconsin and Arkansas. This is one where you could really flip a coin for either of these teams, but at the end of the day, I can't go against John Calipari in his legendary status. I think he's going to win over Wisconsin, go back to the Sweet 16. BYU and Gonzaga. I think this is a sneaky good matchup here. DeBonsa going up against Mark Few in the Gonzaga Bulldogs. I mean, BYU's been on a bit of a losing stretch lately, so I'm going to take Gonzaga here in this spot. Then Purdue taking on Missouri in Missouri's backyard, and the home crowd's not going to help here for the Missouri Tigers. The Boilermakers are going to move on here, go to the Sweet 16. And final quadrant of the bracket, the Midwest region, Michigan, St. Louis. No need to spend time on that. Michigan going to the Sweet 16. Texas Tech and Alabama. This is a pretty even one. Obviously, no JT Toppin. We'll see if Christian Anderson comes back. But yeah, Alabama also lost Aiden Holloway, who's been arrested. Who knows if he'll be back? That's the thing. I would say Texas Tech has been more battle tested. I think they're the better team there. Even though they don't have JT Toppin anymore, Alabama's not going to have Holloway possibly this tournament. So give me Texas Tech here. And then Virginia taking on Tennessee in the round of 32. This is another toss up for me, but I'm going to go Virginia here. I think Tony or Mark Odom's going to move them on. Santa Clara, Iowa State. The round ends for Santa Clara here. Give me the Iowa State Cyclones. And now we have our Sweet 16. We'll start in the East with Duke taking on St. John's. And I think this is where the run for the Johnnies ends. I don't think Patino really has an answer for Cam Boozer, Isaiah Evans, all those guys on Duke. So give me the Duke Blue Devils. And then the other one from the East, we have UConn, Michigan State. This is a question of who you like more, Tom Izzo or Dan Hurley. And both are pretty legendary coaches in their own right. I know Tom Izzo's Hall of Famer. Dan Hurley, I think, will be a Hall of Famer after winning back-to-back titles with UConn in 23 and 24. But I don't know. I like the UConn players better. I like Terrace Reed and Solo Ball. Really great contributors to that category. I think their players are going to overwhelm them. Then Vanderbilt, Florida taking on Vanderbilt. I think there's no way Todd Golden loses to these guys twice. You have uh, Thomas Howe, Alex Condon. Even though they got blown out by Vanderbilt in the semifinals of the SEC tournament, I'm going to take the Gators here. And then moving on, Illinois, Houston. I think this is an easy pick here. Kingston Flemings, Emmanuel Sharp, those guys going to move on to face the Gators in the Elite Eight. One of the best, better Elite Eight matchups. Arizona and Arkansas. I think Arizona's going to win this one. I just don't see Arkansas beating a team with Braden Burries and all those guys. Gonzaga and Purdue. Now, this one is a pretty even matchup, in my opinion, but I'm going to go with the more battle tested team of the Purdue Boilermakers in this one. To the last of the Sweet 16 matchups, Michigan, Texas Tech. Michigan over Texas Tech all the way. I didn't think this is where the run ends for Texas Tech. And then Virginia and Iowa State. A pretty even matchup on paper, but I think I'm going to take Iowa State here. So if you're keeping track, that is a lot of chalk here, to say the least. Ones versus twos, the Elite Eight, all of them. Duke and UConn, give me Duke here. And then Arizona, Purdue, Arizona. Enough said about that. Then Duke and Houston, or excuse me, jumped the gun a little bit there. Duke and or Houston and Florida. Now I think the game is going to be played in Houston, so I think Kelvin Sampson's year to get done is now. There's conversation about them potentially being the number one seed over Florida, but I think Houston's going to get it done here. Give me the Cougars, and then Michigan, Iowa State, and I think Michigan's going to move on here. So our final four is this: Duke and Houston, Arizona and Michigan. So we'll start with Duke and Houston. And of course, Don't Sampson's team's going to fall in the final four here. Give me Duke. Arizona, Michigan, a toss-up game, but they got, excuse me, Lindenberg, Burries. Lindenberg versus Burries, I think, is going to be a great matchup. Arizona, they've won all the games that they've been battle tested against. So that's why I'm going to pick Arizona in this one over Michigan. And now the national championship in Indianapolis. Duke and Arizona. So Arizona, like I said, you had all those guys. They've beat Arizona and Duke have beat all their top opponents in their notable results. But I think the thing that's gonna tip the scales is Indianapolis. Duke has won three championships whenever the national championship has been in Indianapolis. Every single one, it's either been in Indianapolis or three of the four national championships have been won in Indianapolis. The other one was Minneapolis. So give me the Duke Blue Devils here to win at Lucas Oil Stadium. And there we go. Submit the bracket, and there we go. Don't forget to fill out your brackets. I'll put the link to our bracket game in the description below right now. See how many we have. We have 13 people that have joined us. So we got a lot of people here. So don't forget to join that. The link will be in the description below. Anyways, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Like I said, 3 subscribers away as of now for hitting 100. So make sure to help us out to get there before we start the Field of 64 on Thursday. And of course, we won't have an episode on Friday because of March Madness. We'll be streaming that. But we'll be back for another episode like this on Monday. Don't forget to tune into that. Anyways, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you again next time.